still trying to figure out all the technology with Respit's screen sharing. So we'll get started. I will say this. This is going to be about a 20-minute presentation. Certainly, we'll be happy to take your email questions if you have any via online at info@johngself.com. And we will also record this, and it will be available on our website later this afternoon with full slide presentation. So let's get started and figure out what we can do to talk a little bit about improving your resume and your resume, your interview process, and 2 steps you can take to enhance your interview skills. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. For those of you who do not know me, I began my career not as a healthcare executive or some executive search guy or somebody who even thought he would be involved in talent acquisition at some point in the future. I began as a crime writer and investigative reporter. I ended my career at the Houston Post. I joined Herman Hospital, which is the hospital I was born in, coincidentally. And I moved from the world of crime and covering a lot of bad stuff on the mean streets of Houston to serve as the first general director of Life Flight at Herman Hospital in 1976. Now, let me disclose, it was not my idea. I was not even certain he would succeed, but I was told to sink with it or swim with it. And that kind of instruction from your boss is a powerfully motivating statement. After serving as several months at that and enjoying some great success, the president of the aircraft company came to me and said, "Look, we'd like to hire you to help us do this across the country. You clearly understand the process." Well, it was, we copied Flight for Life in Denver. That was the initial extent of my knowledge. But I became the national marketing manager and was instrumental in leading the efforts to set up the next 13 Life Flight programs nationally. I'm really proud of the fact that of all those programs I set up back in the late 70s, all but one are still in existence today. And somebody said, "Gosh, you must have been a great salesperson." And the answer is not really. I was a crime writer, investigative reporter who at that point recognized the hospital maybe 3 out of 5 times. And I knew probably less about helicopters. And here they are. They're flying me around the country, first class. And I am talking to some very conservative executives about putting a helicopter on their roof and making money out of it. And as somebody said, John Self, traveling around the country, talking to conservative people, looking like somebody out of the Mod Squad TV show, what possibly could go wrong? Well, the truth is I was very successful, and we'll talk about an important reason in just a few minutes. I led the business development for Herman Affiliated Hospitals Network. That was a network of hospitals that became a big referral network into the main hospital in Houston and the Texas Medical Center, which is the largest medical center in the world. And then left and ran the largest private EMS system in Northeast Texas, covering 14 counties. We had 50 ambulances and 300 plus paramedics and EMT. In the mid-90s, I started a couple of executive search firms. My first firm was John March Partners, and then in 2010, johngself.com. And I worked in that field for over 27 years, and I worked globally. I recruited in 6 different countries on 4 different continents. I want to invite you also, if you have an interest in learning more about career management and how to promote your career, to subscribe to our free daily Got a Minute. It's a video blog that comes out every morning at 8 a.m. Central Daylight Time. You can subscribe at the top of the page at johngself.com. So let's begin talking about interviewing and what we don't think about when we do interviews. First of all, this is a great quote. It was used as an opening graphic in the movie The Big Short about the housing catastrophe in 2008, 2009, and the near financial collapse of the United States. It's not what you don't know that gets us into trouble. It's what we know for sure that just ain't so. Now, the quote's attributed to Mark Twain. Research shows that he did not say that, so it's simply an author unknown, but it's a fabulous quote, because if there was ever a quote that speaks to a truth about career management and about interviewing, it's this quote. Interviewing is, without question, without debate, a unique form of communication. It is not giving a speech. It is not having a conversation. It is not talking about a PowerPoint or anything else. It is a process where you have to sell your value through, in doing so by answering questions posed to you by a potential employer. There are just not too many types of communication processes that are even close to this unique form of communication. Most people think they're good. If they really want to be critical, they'll say, well, I hold my own. And the truth is, after 27 years of interviewing people, I can tell you that's not right. Most people aren't good at it. And it's not because they're not smart people, they're not good leaders or good managers. Most people don't do well in interviewing because they don't do it often enough. You know, the research shows that the average executive is not going to interview more than about 30 times in his entire professional life. And to only do that 30 times in a very unique form of communication, well, it's fraught with problems. So let's talk about what you can do to be successful. Now, I've just put up 2 chapters of an online career course called Mastering the Art of the Job Interview. It's a variation of a course that I've been teaching for a global professional association at their annual congress for the last 8 years. And it's available now at johngself.com. But the first thing you do is you have to understand your value. And this is going to be really key to part of our formula of what is missing in most interviews and why people struggle and most people fail in job interviews. And when you say most people fail in job interviews, John, how can you say that? I mean, a lot of people getting hired every day. If you look at every job, there was a post the other day online for a VP of communication for a big company, and within 9 minutes, more than 200 people had applied. The competition for the good jobs is really intense. And so the problem most people have is that they don't go to an interview prepared, they don't understand their value, and they fail in the interview. And so I said, wow, that's kind of harsh to say they fail. Look, let's be honest. If you don't get the job, it was a failure. You failed to convince the employer that you were the best person for the job. So don't try to diss off on that recognition. What you want to do is say, yep, now next time, what do I have to do to be better? And one step you have to take is to understand your value. And over the years, I have asked this question in varying forms. Tell me about yourself. Why should we hire you? But the most common, ubiquitous first question is, tell us a little about yourself. What do most people do? Well, the research shows, and my experience ad nauseum was, they start talking about the chronology. Hell, I got your resume. I don't need to know what's on the resume. What I want you to do is tell me why we should hire you. What value are you going to bring to my organization or my client's organization that will be beneficial to them? So they don't understand their value. So what most people do is they talk about chronology. What they should do is to say, this is who I am. These are my values. This is my experience. And this is why you should hire me, because my experience and my accomplishments will work well in this organization and they will align with your needs. Most people don't do that because they come to the interview without really giving much thought to that. And I will tell you that the research shows, and conversations with my colleagues who in the executive search industry will tell you, that their biggest complaint is poor preparation by the applicants. You need to understand the employer's needs, okay? They publish a job summary. Now, some of those job summaries are absolutely bollocks. They suck because they don't give you really any useful information. Even if you break down and parse it to pieces, you can't really get any insight. When that happens, you have to have a network of people that know the organization that you can call in on and find out. You can talk to those people and say, what are their needs? What are the issues? What are their challenges? And then if you get picked for a screening interview and the recruiter calls, you can ask them, is there anything I need to know by what was in the very brief description online? What is the employer, what is the hiring authority looking for? What can you tell me about the culture of the organization? What do you think that department, that division needs in terms of a leader. There are ways to get information. Not asking questions is a big sin. The other thing you must do, and this goes back to, you've got to understand your value. And then to understand your value, you must understand your signature strengths. You must know what your successes are that support those signature strengths. And then you have to curate stories, examples of successes, challenges that you've overcome, before and after examples of your successes, to highlight your skills and to highlight those successes. And why do you do that? Well, when you have hundreds of people applying for jobs, they're going to interview maybe 10 or 15 people in screening interviews, and then they're going to get it down pretty quickly to 4 or 5 people. 5 to 1 odds are still not great. So what do you have to do to succeed? Well, first of all, you've got to be qualified. So don't apply for the job if you don't match up to at least 80% of what they're looking for, because you're wasting your time. Secondly, and because you apply to a lot of jobs within one company that you may not be qualified for, that could really put you in bad stead if the employer is looking for the number of times you've applied for a job. Some people look at that statistic, but you want to apply for jobs you're qualified for, and then you want to be prepared and ready to go in and tell your story effectively. And that is absolutely critical in a competitive market today. If you do not have interesting stories, if you cannot be memorable, if you cannot foster engagement and confidence, you will not succeed. Now, we just finished putting up 2 chapters of Mastering the Art of the Job Interview. You can find that at johngself.com. It's an online on-demand course, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about that. Again, I've been teaching that interview course for a lot of years. So what is missing from most interviews? Well, there's the lack of a cohesive message, your value, their needs put together. If you can talk about, what their needs are, what they're looking for, and you can meet their needs, then you need to really focus your answers into that realm. This is another missing statement. I can't tell you how many times I got a closing statement from a candidate. Almost never. And when I did, it was because I asked for it as the recruiter. Now, can you imagine that? You go in, you're making a pitch, you're selling something, you're selling yourself, and then you don't ask for the sale. You don't ask to close the deal. So you basically sort of wasted your time. And a closing statement, I want the job, is not really a closing statement. Heck, everybody wants the job. That's why they applied. The question is, do you want the job bad enough? Do you want it more than everybody else? Do you want it more than everybody else so that you have put together a cohesive message with stories and illustrations and a strong, gripping closing message? And people say, well, I don't have any stories. In all my years of interviewing, and I've interviewed thousands and thousands of people, from criminals and politicians and I repeated myself. Investigators, police officers, all of those people, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of applicants across the world. People don't sell themselves. They are not prepared, and they don't come in and say, this is why you should hire me. Okay? You know what? I once had an applicant who was perfectly suited for a job, and he didn't get it. And I said, well, tell me, what did you do in your closing statement? And he said, well, I didn't. What do you mean closing statement? I didn't ask to make a closing statement. I mean, they're interviewing me. They had my resume. They ought to figure it out. Brother, if you're expecting the employer to do the math, you're going to lose out. You need to go in and be like a salesman and not sit back and say, I've got this great monitor or this great machine or this great consulting service that you ought to figure out for yourself is going to be great. No, you have to define the value for that customer, and then you have to close the deal. And I want the job is not only not effective, it's not memorable. And if you want to succeed, you have to be memorable. But the big miss, the absolute biggest miss in an interview, and again, this is over 27 years of experience, is a lack of enthusiasm, a lack of passion for the job. And telling me 12 times in the interview, I want the job, is not what I'm looking for. I want you to talk about how exciting the challenges are and how you've done this or that. And in this organization, I did something very similar, and it was so much fun, and it was so successful, and the organization really rallied around this solution, and we went on and beat our budget. We're looking for a story. We're looking for information that, if we're recruiters, that we can promote with our employer to make a great hire. If I'm the corporate recruiter or I'm the hiring authority, I want to know that I'm going to hire somebody who's going to come in and be full throat, all in with this job. And if you expect them to figure that out, reading your resume and listening to you answer questions that you aren't really prepared to answer, you're really losing out. Listen, the world of talent acquisition, recruiting is changing. We're now going to be seeing the use of computers and algorithms more and more to not only source candidates, but screen candidates. So when you do get through all of that rigmarole, and you're one of the 10 people that the computer is isolated as a potential successful candidate, and you go to the interview, whether it's the first telephone interview or it's the final closing interview, you have to be prepared. You have to show enthusiasm. You have to have a message. You have to understand your value, and you must show your passion. This is absolutely critical. So now let's talk about part 2 in this 2-part event today, and it's maximizing your references. You should select your references at the start of the search, not at the offer time. And I've seen more people bungle their application, bungle their search, because they ran around at the last minute to get references because they hadn't thought that they might need them. Duh. It is extremely important that you really manage all aspects of the job search, and not having your reference issues resolved at the end stage is really a bad sign. Now, you really need to start looking for your references when you enter the marketplace. Why? Because the references are an incredible source of valuable information for you. First, let's talk about the number of references. You need to have 4 to 6 more if you are a more senior executive. Why? As a more senior executive may go through more searches before he lands or she lands the final offer. It's just there's a lot of competition, so you may go through 4, 6, 8 searches to get to that new job. References get fatigued if they have to answer the same questions for the same applicant over and over again. Now, that doesn't mean they're not trying to help you or that they're gonna torpedo your candidacy, but they get tired. And so what you don't want to do is have somebody who's kind of tired of answering questions about you to be up to answer critical questions about you at a critical time in the search, and they've already been doing this 4, 5 to 6 times. So be sure you have enough references where you can swap out so that people don't have reference fatigue. The second important thing about the number of references, most people just give 3 or they'll ask. If they ask for 3, give 4. Why? Because 3 may go on vacation, may get sick, may have a heart attack, may go out of town on business, whatever. If they can't find that third person or that second person, it slows down the search, and it's frustrating for recruiters because they are being held, the internal recruiters are being held for time to hire, cost to hire. Executive recruiters, external search firms, they want to get this done and off the table because it's a transaction. It's fees, and they have to meet their quota. So you want to be sure that you're a helpful candidate and give them 4 references to pick from. But before you select the references, call them and solicit their feedback. Ask them, look, I'm going to go into the market for a new job, and it's really important that I really learn from my past experiences. And so if you don't mind, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but would you share with me what you think my strengths and weaknesses are? That is incredibly important information, along with what did you value about me the most as one of your people, one of your team members, one of your employees? What was the most important thing that I brought to the table in your eyes? What do you think I should emphasize? Now, I've had people in courses say, why do you want to ask those questions? The employer knows what they want to ask. You ask these questions of your references in advance because they can give you valuable information that can help you prepare for questions that you may get from the employer. Okay? And those are real life issues. Okay. We've talked about another process to anticipate questions you're going to be asked, and that you can find those in the Mastering the Art of the Job Interview at johngself.com. But this is actionable intelligence that you can use to prepare yourself to be more successful in the job interview. Now, if you have questions, I want you to feel free to go to our website and check things out. You can schedule a free consult with me, and we're happy to answer any online questions. info@johngself.com. But if you go to my website, you punch that button, that can take you to our course page. I hope this Lunch and Learn has been successful and helpful. If you have any questions, email me at info@johngself.com. This is our second live Lunch and Learn, and I promise we will master the technology more effectively as we move forward. Thanks so much for your attention today. We're just about out of time, but thanks for joining us, and this will be available online on our course page as a free course later this afternoon. Thanks again for joining us.